I lived on a U-shaped street growing up. On my side, there were 6 houses. 3 of them had boys, my family had the only girls. We were all friends and had neighborhood block parties, flag football, everyone got along and played well together. We had that one friend whose parents never let you come into their house, and if you did, usually you were with your parent. It was the summer of 5th grade, and on a whim, a few of us decided to skateboard, which led into tag around the house next to the house we could never go in. It was a little before noon, and I had rounded the corner, running, when Mr. B stuck his head out the carport door and asked me to come over. I obliged. He'd asked me to take a look at some photos for a surprise for his wife's birthday, and wanted my opinion on them. I felt really grown up with such a task, and was somewhat excited about it. When I entered, all seemed normal, no big deal. We had gone into his bedroom, which was just off the kitchen, to retrieve the photos, when I heard him call my name. I peeped through the door just a little, unsure of going in. I wasn't allowed in my parents' room, so I was a little taken aback. Anyway, I do what I'm told and follow him over to the dresser, where he opens a drawer and pulls out pictures, which back then were Polaroids. I'm in total disbelief. It feels like a dream as he's showing me these photos of him naked, spread eagle on his sofa. My fight or flight kicks in as he's asking me if I like to take a few of him with his camera, and he could take a few of me if I wanted. I run quickly out the door, through the kitchen, outside where I run to my house and lock the door. I did inform my folks, but they just said not to go back to that end of the street, and that's it. My neighborhood didn't look quite the same after, and as soon as I was old enough, I left and never went back. Mr. B was a total creep. I'm thankful I have not run into him since in this town. It changed my perspective on life in general. I'm a mom of 3 girls now, and absolutely do not sugarcoat things. They are well informed on the things that could happen, and hopefully they will always be smarter than me and never have to encounter such things.
Hey all, I'm so excited to share this story with you. It didn't happen to me, but to my boyfriend's mom in the late 80s. Hearing it sent shivers down my spine. At the time, my boyfriend's mom, Patty, lived in Michigan and was working as a nurse's aide at an assisted living facility for those with mental and physical handicaps. She worked the night shift from midnight to 8 a.m., so her shift consisted mostly of doing checks on the patients, making sure that they were sleeping comfortably, and prepping medication and food for the morning workers. Her wing wasn't very big, so it was usually just her and another aide named Amy in the building. A new patient was admitted to the wing, and like most, if not all, of the other patients, he was unable to speak, so they usually communicated through sign language. She wasn't told about any past behavioral problems with him and has never really dealt with any serious issues with other patients. That was about to change. One night, she was walking down the hallway and started hearing loud grunting noises from the patient's room. She opens the door to see his light is off, so she turns it on to find him standing, facing the dresser, grunting and trembling a little. Now, this man was a big guy, maybe 6'4" or 6'5", a good head and a half over Patty, who is no taller than 5'7". She realizes right away that he had peed himself, so she calls Amy to help her clean him up and get him back into bed. She called out to him, "Is everything okay?" When he turns around, she sees that he has rolled up pairs of socks in his mouth, that he was biting down so hard that his mouth bled and the socks were completely soaked in blood. His eyes were completely black, all pupil, just glaring at her with bloody socks in his mouth. Amy comes in and Patty tells her to change the sheets and bedding while she changes him into new clothes. His eyes made her so uneasy, noticing that they did not deviate from her. The look in his eyes triggered something in her, like she knew something was going to happen. She whispers to Amy, "Look at his eyes. He's watching every move I make." This frightens Amy as well, who finishes making his bed without turning her back on him. Amy leaves the room after they get him into bed. She signs to him goodnight, turns to flick the light switch, turning her head again before doing it. And in a split second, his face is right in her face. He's standing in front of her. Without any time to react, he grabs the back of her head, clutching on to a chunk of her hair, mouth open and growling. She puts one of her hands on top of his head to keep him from biting down on her nose, all the while he's punching on the side of her head with his other hand. She'd go to reach for his arm to stop him from punching. He'd go right back to trying to bite her face. His grip was so tight on her hair, she knew that if she would try to run, she would lose a huge chunk of it. But this guy is continuously punching her head and trying to bite her face. She says, "Screw it," and is able to release herself from his grip and take off down the hall. She screams for Amy and they both run into the bathroom. While he chases after them, she slams the door so hard that the hinges bust and now they're left with a broken door and a guy on a rampage, banging on the door as they push their bodies against it. After a few minutes, he relents, but only to move on to another patient who screams they can hear from down the hall. They were terrified, scared for their safety and the safety of the patient he was brutally beating, but they knew they couldn't stop this guy on their own. Finally, Patty runs from the bathroom to the office so she can call the police. They tell her that a squad car will be there in a few minutes. When the police finally arrive, it's only one cop who needs to enter through the window since the doors are locked and Patty and Amy can't risk leaving the office. He calls for backup, and within a few more minutes, 3 cops are there trying to secure him. They give her the okay to enter the room, but as soon as she does, he kicks his legs off the ground, breaks loose from the cops, and goes after her again before they finally get him in handcuffs and transport him out. After the incident, the facility tries to blame it on her, saying she didn't act appropriately and that she could have handled it on her own and risked the life of the other patient. Poor guy had his nose broken and face beaten to a bloody pulp. They then told her afterwards that this guy had night terrors and hated his mother and that he probably attacked her because apparently she looked like his mother. I suppose that would have been a nice thing to know beforehand.